Tara.
Hi, great to meet you, Carl.
Great to meet you. So, I'm looking forward to this interview.
Me too.
We're going to go over a bunch of things: capital structure of the company, your experience, the deposit, how you're building it out, financing, recent financing, news.
Okay.
A lot of executives have to do a bunch of corporate interviews. I get it. This is the morning drive. We get to relax a little bit.
Okay.
So, and also we're going to Tara's office right now, and I don't know where I'm going. So you're going to hear her tell me to go left, straight, whatever. The first thing I wanted to ask you.
See how bad of a backseat driver I am.
Yeah. The first question I have for you, though, is I want to connect you a little bit more with your shareholders, because you've got a lot of experience. I already know that when I did my due diligence, but I know myself, sometimes you have to fight burnout. So what do you do to not burn out?
Well, I take time with my family, my daughter. My husband is really fabulous at grounding me and making me take time away. Making sure we take time for a family and having some events and things like that. But, I'm pretty driven. I'm a type A person, so I can go a long time without, it doesn't, I love getting up at 4:30 in the morning if that's what I've got to do to talk to a shareholder. I had a 6 a.m. today after being out late at AMEBC yesterday. And, when you're excited and you love what you do, it's easy to not burn out. Oh, it looks like we have a road closed, so we're going to have to turn left here rather than go down that usual road.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense if you're a type A personality, which is in line with most executives. So you don't have to hit the reset button as often. You kind of just keep going.
Yep.
Let's get into your experience, because right now I hear this in our community and friends and investors. They say, Carl, listen, if the companies don't check off the management side of things, I won't go any further.
Right.
That kind of pertains to juniors and developers. So let's get into that.
Sure. Well, I started my career in placer mining. So, and I became a geological engineer. I did both a bachelor's and a master's degree there. So I'm quite technical. I believe in doing things scientifically and methodically, which, really helped when I was running a placer mine. It actually grew to be one of the largest. We're going to go up to that street there and turn right. Okay. So I spent time first, running equipment, and then
like actually running the equipment.
Running the equipment.
Bulldozers.
Yep, that's how I paid my way through university, was camp cooking and running bulldozers, excavators, loaders. I loved the excavator. And then I moved my way up to being the foreperson of the mine, and then I ended up being the manager and did all of the planning, budgeting, financing, permitting, community relations for it. And it was a fairly large, sizable operation. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I started a consulting business working with First Nations, as well as mining companies. I even worked with Newmont. During that time period, and while I was placer mining, I became the president of the Placer Miners Association, and actually joined both AMEBC and then eventually PDAC as directors. I think I was the youngest female director of the PDAC, the first woman president of the Klondike Placer Miners Association, and youngest ever president. In my 20s, and spent a bunch of time learning about policy and, so much you think that the decisions we made around regulations are scientifically driven, but there's an awful lot of politics, and we're going to turn left behind that truck. Okay. And so that great experience, I learned about public policy making, I learned about working with First Nations, I learned about the operational aspects, and there were some pretty lean gold prices through those times, so I had to learn how to budget and run an operation, and that really serves me well. You'll notice one thing I do differently at Banyan is I really watch my dollars, and that's $2 an ounce on our first resource, drilling costs under $300 per meter all in. It's because we're very cautious and we plan ahead and we think about making sure we're spending our shareholders' dollars well. And because I'd been on the KPMA and I had this public policy experience, I actually ended up being appointed by the federal government to the Yukon Environmental and Socio-Economic Assessment Board, which in the Yukon replaces the Canadian assessment process. So that was a great experience. I was there for 12 years as well. And then I joined the board of Banyan in 2012. I'd been on other public companies since 2006. And then 2 CEOs of Banyan later, we were looking for a CEO. We'd sold some of our placer assets. My biggest client of my consulting company was Kaminak, which got purchased by Gold Corp. So I didn't have a lot of obligations there. I decided not to stand for another term of the Environmental Assessment Board, and I thought, hey, I could actually do this. I'm quite a bit more qualified than the people that we've currently interviewed. So,
sure.
That started Banyan. And
so we're going to get into where things got really exciting, and I think that was in 2017, at least when you optioned this property. But let's talk about the structure of the company financially.
Sure.
How many shares are outstanding right now, fully diluted?
Roughly 260 million.
260 million. What's the financial, how much is in the till?
Just minorly under 19 million. We started this year with just over $19 million.
Okay. And what percentage of that do you plan on putting into the ground?
Right now, we're planning to spend about $10 million in our Phase 1 exploration program, our metallurgy, our baseline environmental that we have planned for this year. So that's going to leave us a pretty strong treasury, which we can decide to either upsize our exploration, or that'll give us G&A for 2 more years if we need that to be the case. So we're being a little cautious. We want to get our resource out, which we're planning for mid-year. So that Phase 1 program gets us, through August into September, and it gives us lots of optionality, which I think is super important. I'm a big believer in gold, but I'm also protecting my shareholders and my employees and making sure that we're prudent. We've got great shareholders. That last financing that we did in December.
They came in. So I want to know more about these shareholders, because obviously people are going to hear you're still in the exploration phase. You're still growing the deposit, right?
Yep.
So let's be honest, the shares outstanding is a little high.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that there'll be some investors that will go, well, I'm out, or I don't want to touch that, right?
Yep.
But that doesn't mean it's not going to be a successful story. And when you dig into this story, people will realize that it's got a lot of good things going for it. So you have to have good shareholders to have that many shares outstanding. So, can you tell me a little bit about these groups that have been supporting and how long they've been supporting the company?
Sure. When I first took over, it was really hard to finance. I, wasn't well known in the industry. People weren't taking risks on, 5 million market cap companies. It was very difficult to raise money. So I ended up having to go to many of the conferences and find people that I knew, many CEOs, many analysts and brokers who personally would invest but couldn't yet recommend it to their clients.
Right.
So that was the first kind of phase of financings. And then things have kind of changed in the last few years as we've got, and particularly now that we have a 4 million ounce resource, we now have a very large institutional shareholding. So 48% are high net worth individuals and institutions, which is pretty high.
Yeah.
Then we have one corporate, Victoria Gold, our neighbor, at 11.4%, and then Osisko Development at 4%, and insiders just under 8%. I'm 4% myself, which I've purchased in the market. So I'm the third CEO. So I had took it over. There were already a lot of shares outstanding. So,
and you decided not to roll it back.
Well, of all the priorities, unless there's a significant event, if you look at all the companies that roll back, they just trade back down. So there'll be a time that might be the right thing to do. It's not yet.
Yeah, exactly. I get it. Totally get it and respect that. Okay, so you've got lots of institutional support. You've got some retail in there. Let's get into the deposit now. Take me back, 2017. You optioned this property. Take it from there.
So actually, I'm going to go back to 2013, before I was even the CEO.
Sure.
In 2013, I purchased an estate that included placer assets, including the placer assets immediately under the McQuestion property and where Powerline is from another placer miner. So I knew there was gold on the surface in the sediments, which is a really good indication that there might be something around. I also knew the prospector that took out the 16 tons of 2-ounce material right from the airstrip deposit from some high-grade veins. So, I was on the board of Banyan, but wasn't really thinking about optioning properties for Banyan because I was just a director. Fast forward to 2016, I became the president. I knew our Highland project down in southeast Yukon really wasn't going to get any traction in the market. I knew Victoria Gold was building the Eagle Gold Mine or trying to get finance to do that. And so I thought, I should get that property. And I'd worked for Osisko as a consultant for several years, and the Newmont work that I did involved Osisko. We're going to turn right here if we can still do that. And then we're going to turn left on Burrard, which is a few blocks down with a traffic light. So because of my good relationships with Victoria Gold and Osisko, and they were holding the property at the time, and it was one of these properties that even since the time of the gold rush, even though there'd been some interest in the property, nobody had consolidated it. And because most people in that area were looking for silver, so lead and zinc assays, nobody took a gold assay till 1980 on the property.
Wow.
So here it is, right underneath the highway. And I thought, well, I'm going to try and option that. So I went to Osisko and Victorian. Of course, Clint thought it was the perfect alignment of stars. You know, they didn't want to have somebody they didn't trust working the property beside them because of the reputational risk with First Nations and permitting. And
which was very different at the time.
It's very different, yeah. And then, managed to do a deal. It had a bunch of soil anomalies, and Osisko done a bit of work on their side, so that's where we thought the bulk of the deposit was likely to be. So we took those old drill holes and the trench logs, and we started to work on a model. We had to actually relog old core because over the years there'd been 30 different geologists, or 6 different geologists, and they'd named 30 different rock types, and we got it down to 6. And really the real key was putting together a geochemical model or a chemostratigraphic model to map the rocks rather than visual. Mm-hmm. And from that we thought, we think we can see 750,000 ounces at 0.5, and then we financed in October of 2019. We started drilling in October of 2019 and through November. And then in spring, we were able to come out with that first 900,000 ounce resource at 0.54. So right on doing what we said we would do. And then we financed again and drilled another 40,000 meters for the resource that we put out this spring. So 4 million ounces at 0.6. And now we've drilled another 50,000 meters for our resource update this mid-year this year.
That's pretty amazing.
It's a pretty short timeline. It's... Yeah,
there's a lot of companies that would love to be in that position. So here we are. What's the game plan now?
Well, we want to get this resource update out. We've always said our next resource we wanted to target to have 6 to 7 million ounces, which would make us a tier 1 asset. I think we're on track for that. So, and I think people are starting to realize that we do what we say we're going to do. That's why we're doing a phase 1, 25,000 meters. We know we have some targets. We were really excited with that 2 kilometer step out at Oryx Hill and the 84 meters of 1.14 right from surface, which has lots of room around it. So lots of 1 gram material that we think we can follow up on. We've gone right back to basics, done a new lineament analysis, looked at the geochem, overlaid the geochemistry and some of the elemental ratios, which are potential vectors for us on top of all of that. And that's given us 4 new high value targets we want to drill. We've got some areas we know we have to drill in winter, which we want to get at hard as soon as we can. And then there's the elusive, where is the intrusive? Right. And that's the other thing we have a couple ideas on, and hope to get a few holes to test some of our theories on that.
How big have your step-outs been so far? Because those are always exciting.
Well, the last one we had was 2 kilometers, so we now have 5 kilometers of strike length. And just for context, the Power Line deposit, which is our biggest deposit, has 3 million ounces in 1.2 kilometers of east-west. And this mineralization seems to be in a unit that goes due east-west. I'm glad, nature had a compass to get this so nice and square.
Right.
But it's pretty consistent across. And that's the one benefit our deposit really has, is it's amazingly, remarkably consistent. You step out, we find more mineralization, and when we drilled the 25 meter spaced holes at Power Line to kind of get a better idea of continuity, we were really impressed with how well it hung together. And a lot of times when you do that, you see either ounces decrease or grade, and both actually increased in that area that we did that. So we were really pleased with that, and our QP was pleased. So yeah.
The asset is called, or the deposit I should say, is called Power Line. So I'm assuming the infrastructure has power. There's a power line.
Yeah, there's a brand new power line across it actually. There was a power line there, it goes up to Keno. In 2021, the Yukon government replace that line with a 138 kilovolt line. It's only energized to 69 because that's all that's needed for the current load on the line. So it actually has capacity. It's just 50 kilometers from the hydroelectric dam in Mayo. So green power line already in there. We even have Victoria Gold substation on the property, which is another great asset. We probably would connect to the 69 kilovolt line at our Thompson Creek camp, and we'd need about 50 meters of power line from the power company to get across the highway to our camp, and then we would have our step-down transformer and power our camp right there, and then we'd run another line down to our other camp, and then eventually once you figure out where your mine infrastructure goes, you might reorganize where you connect. But having a power line already on the property is huge.
Yeah.
There's even fiber optic cable that goes along the bottom of the power
That's
power
great
line.
for the technical team.
Yeah.
Well, everybody. Really,
Everybody needs power.
Yeah.
And internet. We have cell phone service though, so our camp currently runs on cell phone internet.
Okay, great. Relationships with First Nations. You're in the Yukon. Want to cover that?
Sure. We only have one First Nation whose traditional territories this property's in. It's the Natchonai First Nation. We have taken a lot of time to develop relationships and get to know people, which, I think, I'm probably one of the few people that has a home in Mayo, and I actually spend time there. My daughter, we go to the GAs, we go, and my daughter plays part of the community. Yeah, we show up, which is really important. My team does a great job in hiring locally and training locally, which sometimes means you end up with people that have various challenges that you have to really work with individual schedules. It is that's something that I'm proud of our team, because they are well known for being really amenable and helpful to try and help people learn.
What's the flight to Yukon from here? I would just like
it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes, and it's not very expensive either. We have 2 airlines, Air Canada and Air North.
I've been to the Golden Triangle.
Yeah.
I haven't been to...
Oh, it's much easier to get to Whitehorse and to our property. So fly to Whitehorse, and then it's about 5-hour drive from the capital of Whitehorse to our property. But it's all on the highway. We're like right off the highway.
That would just be a beautiful drive.
We have lots of our employees who drive their own vehicles because they live in the Yukon, and that way they can be in control of their schedule a bit.
Anything else about the deposit that you want to talk about?
Oh, it's right on surface. That's why Powerline's so exciting. Strip ratio 0.34 to 1. So, people say, well, how big are you going to make this, Tara? And I'm like, well, one, I don't think we've found enough yet. We really haven't had that many seasons of exploration.
Right.
It's tough exploration because it's really rolling topography. We have a little bit of geochemistry, but it is not like we have a big hillside with rocks sticking out or veins popping out in the creek. We have to use all kinds of things that like geochem, structure, and deduction, because we don't see lots of evidence on the ground without drilling. Right. And then we had to drill this 100-meter step-out grid to really find the mineralization. So is that the best way? No, it would have been great if we had exposure. It would have been great if we had access to some of these other target areas that we now have identified. But here we are. So I think there's lots more room to grow. I had quite a few people have told me, don't leave ounces on the table. If it's still open, make sure that you at least step out and show that it's open in those directions and figure out how far it is. And maybe there's more high grade. If we could find 2 years of 1 gram plus, that would be better than what Victoria Gold had in their feasibility study, where they had 2 years of 0.8 grams per ton.
Right. That
gave them payback in 2 years. So let's say I can find, and I think it's there, if you look at the sensitivity table for Powerline, and we used a 0.2 in the resource, but if you look at the sensitivity table and you go to 0.5, you have 2 million ounces at basically a gram. So is it there? Is it near surface? I'm not quite ready to constrain this deposit. We are starting all the baseline environmental, starting some of the engineering, thinking about the mining, the geotechnical work. The metallurgy is hugely important, and we have a very big program of that underway to de-risk this project. People need to know the answers to that you can recover the gold. So we're doing all those things, but I also still think we owe it to our shareholders to take a little bit of a look for the higher grade, see if we can target the intrusive. That's a key difference between both us and Victoria Gold and Snowline. Snowline's high grade is their intrusive. So these deposits are formed by, a molten body of rock, which, has the gold in it, intruding into it. And we're in the rock that it's leaked out into, which sometimes, not always, is lower grade than the actual intrusion. So, Snowline's getting all this great news for the high grade that they've found. Victoria Gold's mining their intrusion. That's what their main deposit is. So where's ours? You can't be too far away. This type of deposit, they're generally within 5 kilometers, if not a lot less. So is it at depth? Is it somewhere else on our property? We're doing a whole lot of technical work to try to figure that out. We might even have a contest to see, give people the opportunity to guess a drill hole, and who wins we'll give a gold coin to. So look to see that.
I really like that. If you had to wrap it up here,
Yes.
is this a sellable thing? Can you know, I mean, would...
Oh, absolutely, but it's too early. As a shareholder,
yeah.
I need a little more time. So I'm glad that the market is the way it is right now, because it gives me the opportunity to really add value.
Do your work.
Do my work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here's a question I haven't asked anyone yet. Has there been any new technology to help the geos over the last couple of years during the pandemic that you know about that it's really helped them?
Not, you know, ours is pretty old-fashioned geology, and, you know, looking at the geochemistry, would any of the AI found this fast? I don't think so. I don't think we had a large enough database even for the AI. Part of what we're seeing now is having that huge drill database, which is giving us all kinds of different geochemical ratios. We can see the different layers. We can model each of the layers individually. That's all helping us. You know, oriented core has been around for a while. You know, there's not a whole lot. I don't think that would have helped us in this case. You know, the LiDAR technology is fabulous. The high quality LiDAR, that is really useful. Even in the swampy areas, you know, we didn't think that we would be able to see anything there, but the quality is so good, we can actually see structures. So that has been cool. Really cool. Yeah, I looked at that and it was amazing.
You know, maybe the latest news for shareholders and potential new shareholders.
So yeah, we put out some drill holes. They were great. And then we put out that 2 kilometer step out hole showing that there's continuity. Another 2 kilometers out from Oryx Hill. That's pretty exciting. Remember, Paraline's in 1.2 kilometers of east-west. That's right. 3 million ounces. That's a lot. So we wanted people to understand how big that is. We still have 50 plus holes from last year coming. We're going to start drilling here in March. We'll open up our camp in February. We plan to hit it hard with 4 drills through the winter season because we have so many drill targets. And then we'll back off a bit when spring freshet comes because that's just messy. Yeah, and then we'll come back in summer and start to drill the summer drilling. Mm-hmm. But we have that prep lab on site too, so our timelines will be much reduced to get our assays. That'll help us. You can see this mineralization in the core. You can't tell the grade, but with vein densities you get an idea. So it hasn't been like we've been drilling blind. Once you get a hole, if it looks weak, you know, we adapt our plan based on that. But you can also tell when it looks strong, and so we're excited to have that prep lab right on site.
Did you hire the same drill crew this year?
We did, absolutely.
You're happy with them?
They knocked it out of the park, and they're really easy to work with. So, and our crew is really excited to come back. You know, people ask, are you having trouble getting enough staff? Well, we start early. Last year we started in January. There's not a lot of other field geology positions in the Yukon, so people that are Yukoners love to work for us because we're 11 months of the year. Most are 12 months because we do have lots of winter report writing and things to do, but that it really has been an advantage for us to have that long season to get people.
Yeah, no doubt. What if the cost? You know, we've just seen pretty crazy inflation here.
Yeah.
Going back to the 70s, basically. Have you been able to do anything to get the cost down?
Absolutely. So our drill costs, you know, 2 years ago we were at $250 a meter, then we climbed up to $275. We're now $300. We're banking on being under $325. Things that we've done to reduce the cost, one is we own a lot of our stuff. We own our pickup trucks, we own our camp, so we're not paying rental on any of that. And we got them before the prices skyrocketed. Nice. We also bought large fuel tanks so that we can actually take 3 full B trains of fuel, which was huge in savings last year because we could monitor the weekly prices and we'd know when the fuel price changes. So we would get a price, we could get a sense of where we thought fuel was going. And there were huge swings in fuel last year, sometimes 20 cents a liter. Yeah. And we were able to time it so that we could get the loads of fuel in, then have 35 plus days of fuel, which gives us optionality on when we buy fuel. So we probably saved about $250,000, $300,000 in fuel costs by doing that last year, which is pretty significant.
Any helicopters?
No, we had two brief times with helicopters to take our First Nations Lands Department for tours, but we avoid helicopters. We're all road access and we're permitted for roads and trails, and it's way cheaper to do that. We also switched to propane generators at our camp, which are way cheaper, use a lot less fuel, and have also
propane versus
diesel. which also reduces our greenhouse gas emissions very significantly. So that's great. And eventually, and those we actually have rented, but we've rented them from a company that has a partnership with the Development Corp. And because we don't want to own those, because we do envision ourselves getting connected to the grid, it's better for a short-term rental. So environmental benefits and cost savings.
Okay. Are you going to be at PDAC?
Absolutely. I'm going to BMO too, right before PDAC. We're flattered to have been invited, and that's a very important conference for us.
Okay. Well, if there's some news, if there's an update, we'll be there.
Awesome.
And keep going?
Oh, no, we passed it right back there. We were just talking, so I like driving.
Me too. I quite...
So we could loop back around and then just come back up Brad.
Do a loop-de-loop?
Loop-de-loop, yeah.
Yeah, I actually quite enjoy driving and talking. I think that's why I love the morning drive so much.
Well, we go to Whistler to go skiing, and that is the most fun, just having the time to sit with your partner and our daughter and talk about stuff.
That's a little reset too.
It's a great reset.
What's that, like an hour and 45?
Yeah, basically 2. You just count on 2 and then you aren't stressed out.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, we can stop it here unless we...
Sounds great.
Okay, well, hey, there was a great morning drive. I wish you nothing but luck. And,
Thank you.
You know, obviously luck is great, but you got the experience too. And maybe we'll catch up with you at PDAC.
Absolutely. Well, we got a great treasure hunt ahead of us, so thank you.